Welcome to February 15, 22, special meeting of the Human Services Advisory Board. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Thank you for attending. Roll call. Joanne here. Mary Ailes. Monica Gonzalez.
Present.
Okay. Alfreda Lee. Eleanor O'Shan.
Here.
Melina. Gloria.
Here.
And Megan.
Here.
Okay, with 7 members out of 7 voting members in attendance, we now have a quorum. Staff, is anyone present in person, online, or by phone to speak during the citizen comment period?
No.
We will now consider approval by motion of the November 9th, 2021 and October 12th, 2021 meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
I'm sorry, I need to correct that. It should read of the November 16th, 2021 meeting minutes. I'm sorry, I made your script.
Okay, correction's been made. So we will now consider approval by motion of the November 16th, 2021 and October 12th, 2021 meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
And I'm sorry, it's just the November 16th.
So it's just the November 16th? Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. Okay, the correction's been made. So it's just the November 16th, 2021 meeting. So now do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from November.
By Monica? Okay.
Yes.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Gloria? Okay, does the board have any discussion or corrections regarding the minutes? And no, the corrections already been made. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 All against say no or nay. And so the motion to approve carries. The next action item is to hold a staff facilitated discussion among board members as an after action review on the fiscal year 2021-22 Human Service Advisory Board application review process to discuss best practices and areas of improvement and provide direction to staff. I will turn the floor over to Carol.
Okay, so in your packet, under the first tab, you have some questions, and I thought I would just ask the question and then discussion can ensue. I'm not going to be taking notes as we go, but we're going to transcribe the minutes. So we'll capture everything that you say. So please feel free to give us your ideas and your thoughts about what could be done different or better or what went well. So the first question I just thought I'd ask right off the bat is, what do you feel should have been done differently? And just to remind you, what we're talking about is the whole application process. So from the start where we were notifying applicants and putting out the application form through discussion with the board, the presentations of the applicants to the board, the question and answer sessions, the discussion, and then the meetings where we had just the board discussing the applications and scoring them and so forth. So it's a really broad question of what do you feel should have been done differently? And I think we should try to just discuss without raising hands, I guess. Let's try that. If it becomes
Just jump
awkward,
in.
yeah, just jump in.
Okay.
And if it becomes awkward, I'll watch for hands.
I think for me is the very beginning of the process with the courtesy emails. I think that they should be more defined so that it won't come back on us as a problem. I think it should read that this is courtesy and that, not all applicants or not all organizations may get a courtesy email, but it's up to you to do your due diligence to make sure that you apply on time. And I think it also should be in there that if you do not apply on time, then you will not be considered at all. That way, we don't have to spend that extra time voting on 7 to 8 people who didn't get a courtesy email, but decided, but for whatever reason, didn't apply on time. I think that that's a waste of time. And I think that if you are applying for a grant, then it's up to you to make sure that you call, go by, send somebody by, email. I mean, your website is right there where you can, clearly see when the grant is available for you.
Joanne and I completely agree with you. And I think that we could define the parameters as, doing our best to notify maybe the last 3 years of applicants or something to that effect, and trying to ensure that we have correct email addresses. But yes, and then, like set parameters around how far back or for sending a courtesy, and that it is a courtesy. And I do think they do a great job of trying to let the community know that this grant opportunity is available. So, and let's move forward. Once that deadline is done, it's done. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think we should have to go back and vote on people who missed it.
I agree. I think if we clearly state our expectations on a website, everyone is on the same page. I'm really concerned with the resources of the admins, because courtesy emails do take time, even though there might be a database. So I would say let's just eliminate the courtesy emails altogether. And that would reduce the administrative burden on the admins. And it also eliminates any confusion of, well, so-and-so got one and I didn't even know it's clearly stated on our website. Let's just maybe streamline that process, make sure our expectations are on the website of what the deadlines are, with some sort of disclaimer that there is no guarantee that you will be considered if you miss the deadline, or if you do meet the deadline and you do not meet this criteria, you will not be considered for funding.
I
I
agree.
think that's another important point, is that they need to have all of the requirements in.
Up front, yeah, so that we don't
Yes.
run into that too, yeah.
I think that was a lot of, I don't know the behind the scenes, but I can only imagine that the resources of the city of San Marcos was running around making copies and dropping them off at our houses, delivering them. That takes time away from their families. They're working outside of the city hours. And we need to be considerate of the admins that are supporting our committees.
I agree.
If it is clearly stated on the website,
I agree also, absolutely.
it will be a smoother process for everybody.
I agree. I think that we should vote on that, if we should just totally eliminate the courtesy emails altogether. Because this is the only, the city is the only entity I know that sends out courtesy emails. So.
I agree. I totally agree. I totally agree. We should not send out any courtesy emails, because, and I want to speak to one of our applicants who did not get a courtesy email, and it was an organization who had been with us and routinely took the time to watch the website, all of the ways that we let people know that, the funding is there. And if we keep sending out courtesy emails, we're going to forget, somebody's going to get missed. I mean, it's human error. But because that person spoke so genuinely about not being notified, and is an organization who gets their paperwork in on time, watches for the notices of the funding, we should just vote like Joanne said and not send any more receipt. because it really was,
Waste of time.
it was an issue. It could have been a bigger issue. I'm going to just be honest about it. It could have been a bigger issue. People could have kept coming and coming. So we could set ourselves up with that. I know it wasn't deliberate, but the admins, it's a lot on them, and we're going to miss somebody. And it opens up a door for a lot of issues for this board.
Right.
So I agree with Joanne. We need to vote on that, and let's not send any more courtesy letters.
I agree. So that's one that we should have done differently. Is there
Okay.
anything else?
Thank you. So would you like to go ahead and vote on that?
We want to go ahead and vote on that now? Yeah.
Yeah,
we
because
can.
this is listed under action
Okay.
items. I don't see why not.
Okay, so can I make a motion and a second regarding this recommendation that we vote to eliminate the courtesy emails that are sent out to organizations?
So moved.
I second.
And, okay. So that has, the motion is approved. It to carry that we will, that we voted to eliminate all courtesy emails.
Okay, so you'll need to go ahead and have the vote. So you've got a motion by Mary
Okay.
and a second by Monica, and then you'll need
Okay.
to call for everybody to say aye.
And then all that are in agreement to this, say aye. Or
I
raise your hand.
Aye.
And all that not agreeing, say nay. Okay, so now the motion to approve carries, and we have voted to eliminate the courtesy email sent out to the different organizations.
Okay, great. So I think that was really clear.
That was easy.
Yeah. So now, as far as what do you think should have been done differently, that was part of the very beginning of the process. Let's carry it on through. Is there anything that someone would like to bring up about the presentation process or the process of discussing as a board that could have been done differently?
I do. I feel like, and I want to say this, and this is not a jab at anybody, but when we have a procedure that we're supposed to utilize, then that's what we need to do. I mean, I know that, we had training and, Carol, you guys were coming on and you guys were learning with us this new procedure. But when it is there in black and white, we need to follow the policies and procedures. I feel like we were the board, we were placed in a very difficult situation, okay, because we went back after we had looked at all the organizations, we voted on them, and then we went back up in there. And I don't know about y'all, I start thinking differently. I think once we make the decision, we need to move on. We didn't do that. We went back in there. We were considering, we went back and gave money here and there. And then fast forward to it going before the city council, we weren't there to represent ourselves. We weren't there to speak for how we came about our decisions. Nobody was there to explain that we followed the policies and procedures that were put in front of us. We were not in control of what the city council was going to do, what they were going to say, the decisions that they were going to make. Now, what I did see and what was done in there, I was not in agreement with it at all, but they have the final decision. But we were not there to defend ourselves. We weren't there to say, hey, we follow these policies and procedures that came from your department. But nobody spoke up. Nobody said anything. And the whole situation with PALS, it wasn't that I don't feel like the board didn't want to fund PALS. We followed the policies and procedures there was an issue with their paperwork. Oh, it was so cut and dry. I mean, the corridor printed all this stuff. I don't care because I stick to what I said and I meant it. But we were following the policies and procedures.
I agree with you, Mary.
Yeah, Eleanor, we got raked over the coals and none of us were
We were just trying to do due diligence and follow
Yes.
all the paperwork together. And so, it kind of goes back to the courtesy emails, or how long are we going to allow people to continue to, put in their paperwork or establish certain set goals. It's like, okay, if you don't have this, then that's,
Yeah.
I have to move on to the next. And yeah, I felt kind of thrown under the bus about that too. It wasn't, we didn't want to fund them.
It wasn't that.
It was
was
kind
that
of thrown under the bus. It was thrown under the bus, especially when I opened it up and I saw Joanne Parsons say it, and I'm like, oh my God, that is so
Yeah,
taken
that
out
was-
of context. But I had a little meltdown, and then I was like, well, oh well,
The perception is not always what it is what I'm saying, because they perceived something of this board that was not there. Everybody on this board was very capable of making their own decision, and I feel like they did.
Yeah. And
You know,
because of that,
so,
we had to- yeah, and because of that, we had to go back, and certain people sent emails, and all of this could have been just totally avoided. I think if Carol or someone had spoken up on our behalf in some way and just said, hey, the Human Services Advisory Board followed the procedures that was given to them, and this was the reason that they made the decision that they did. Even, that I would have loved for that to have been part of the record or the recording to city council, because it was like our decision was totally ignored, and we followed the rules, but they were able to break them. And like Mary said, they have the final say so, but I think that it should have been interjected in there in some way, that all we did was follow the rules. And I think that could have avoided a lot of hurt feelings. A lot of people feeling like they were being thrown under the bus for just doing their job, and just really making it seem like our decisions were just, we could have stayed at home and they could have did it themselves.
Yeah.
If you're going to give us, a guidelines, and we have a policy and procedures set in place and we follow them, then don't rake us over the coals just because you don't agree with them. But I really think, Carol, that you or someone could have just spoken up, even though they might not have asked, you could have just put that in there somewhere, that we followed the rules. Because that's all we did.
Okay.
We followed the rules.
I think they need a training also. That's a recommendation, that they need to be trained on how this board operates. Somebody should have handed them a copy of the policies and procedures, the application, because it was very obvious they didn't know what the heck or how we operated. So I'm making a recommendation, Carol, to take it back to them, that they need to have training. They need to know, how this board operates, please. That's my recommendation. And I'm going to follow up to see if they got it, because I had the opportunity to talk to some of the board members, and I found out they do not know. They don't know, they didn't know the process. But I told them, and you shouldn't be making some of the decisions you made without understanding. So that is my recommendation to take back to them. And that's a problem. They need to be trained also.
Yeah, and that doesn't just go for the Human Services. That goes for any board that they have final say-so over. They need to know exactly how that board operates and what policies and procedures and guidelines we follow to get to our final decision.
So
I-
we'll
have we
definitely
not-
take note of that.
Yeah, have we not resolved that problem by saying if you don't submit your application within the time frame that you're not going to be considered for funding? I mean, did I miss
ma'am.
something? Have we not resolved that problem?
No, ma'am, because this is PALS when they lost their what's that certification for
Yeah, the
nonprofit
certification.
certification in the
Right.
middle of the process.
Right.
And we said that we wouldn't fund them because of that. So it didn't have any, they turned their application in on time, but
Uh-huh.
it's just they lost their whatever, their nonprofit certification during the middle of us funding.
Okay.
And so that's
okay.
why we said we couldn't fund them, because according to our guidelines, procedures, policies, or whatever, they have to be nonprofit, and they were not.
Yeah, well, and I get that. And can we not include that in whatever it is, however you're presenting?
It
you don't
is.
do it by this date line, and if you're not legit filed nonprofit, that's not gonna happen. I
Or
mean,
Well,
if you
if-
lose your nonprofit status, that's it. If you
exactly.
lose your
I mean,
nonprofit
I
status
think they're two of the same.
before funding,
Right.
then you won't be,
Right.
be.
Well,
yeah.
let me,
So it's really the same issue. You want money, you gotta file it in time. You want money, you gotta stay on your status of a nonprofit. You know,
Right.
boom.
But-
I mean, I don't
I mean,
want.
You're right, Gloria.
Right.
Right, Gloria, thank you.
but we do
Right.
have those requirements, and the city council chose to ignore that part. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we were.
Oh, okay,
So,
all right, I get
yeah.
it then. I get
Yeah.
the issue then.
Yeah,
All
and I
right.
think we're
But-
all okay with them ignoring that part if they want to and if they have the power to. But I think that they should also know that we followed the rules, and that was not,
Are you
I
sure
mean,
they
that was
didn't
totally
know that?
missed.
Are you
Yeah.
sure this is a real question. So the city council didn't know that, hey, they didn't file nonprofit in
I don't think
time,
they
and that's
cared.
why we didn't give them any money? Did they not?
I didn't hear that. That should have been presented. They should have had all that information. Okay, so they made themselves look
It's
stupid.
not their first rodeo. They've been doing it for a
So-
while.
Exactly, Gloria.
Right,
So they-
so,
they-
I mean, did the city council know that?
They had it, they had that information, yes.
They had
Okay.
access
They
to it,
made
but
that decision. Do you know, are you privy
Even though
to
you-
why they decided to give them money anyway, or?
even
or
though you
what?
have access to information, doesn't mean you read it,
Or that you act on it. So
Yeah.
they decided to do something different.
not
All
read
right,
it.
well,
neither.
I mean.
That sets a bad precedence, because the next organization who didn't get money could have come right behind them and did the same thing. Just F up.
So,
Okay, all right.
okay,
Well,
I think
I
that.
don't know how to remedy that, and I don't know if
Yeah.
we can do it.
I don't
I
know.
have a suggestion, maybe perhaps, I don't know if they've done this in the past before COVID, but is there a way that maybe city council members can meet with all different committees, maybe just one big
Oh,
group
my
meet
goodness, yeah.
out, and that puts faces with the names, and we're not just a committee that exists somewhere in the background, but they get to know us and we get to know them and create that rapport and personal relationship with these individuals. And maybe that would help with this conflict that I'm interpreting between the city board and the committees.
Yeah.
So
Or if they
Would that
just
be a
read.
possibility?
The
Yeah.
way that could happen is that it would have to be posted as a dual meeting. It would have to be posted as a city council meeting and a Human Services Advisory Board meeting. I'm not sure, if they would want to do that or not. We could certainly put it forth as a request.
Or if they don't want to do that, can you recommend that they read?
Well, I cannot do that.
Well,
We,
no.
we provide them information and we assume that they are doing their job, and
Yeah.
we just simply have to assume that. Yeah,
Right.
I really can't.
Okay.
Well, and I'm not
So
sure
there-
what the right terminology is, but did they make some kind of request to be reconsidered for funding? Is that how it came about, where they got the money despite they weren't, didn't renew their status, or
Right. I
We
think,
don't-
I
we
think it
don't
was
know.
contingent on them.
we don't know?
Getting their status back.
Yeah, we don't know.
Carol,
So
did
there
they
you go.
get their status back? Did they get their 20,000?
They have not turned in paperwork yet. And the way it's worded in their contract is that they cannot receive the funding until that is taken care of.
So
Oh,
they
there you
have
go.
not
They haven't received
Gotcha.
any funding. They're not going to until they have
Okay.
that situated. It's put into their contract that they
Okay.
can't receive funding.
I was
until
just
that.
asking, I mean, it's been a long time.
It has. It
Okay,
has. And just to answer Gloria's question, we don't know, one of the city council members brought it up at the meeting. We don't know what precipitated that. We just don't know if PALS requested it or not. It was not part of what, of a staff request. Right?
Okay.
okay.
Well, I think we're all in agreement that if you know, you don't have your paperwork in order, then you don't get any money. Like,
We just keep
Yes.
following our rules.
Yeah.
what can I
I think our
say?
rules and our criteria.
You know,
should be
it's a hard
consistent.
thing. You know, even though
Yeah.
what you're doing is a wonderful, wonderful thing, if you know, if you don't have your paperwork in order, then you don't get it. I mean, this is
Yeah, I
America.
agree,
you know,
Gloria.
nothing happens without proper paperwork.
Paperwork.
You know, being
Right.
filed.
And
I
I
see
think it
that
is
Megan wanted to speak.
transparency.
Yeah, Megan, what?
Yeah, I had a
You're right, Monica. You're right. That transparency. You're so right about that. But if they don't follow the rules, then why should we have to follow the rules?
Because
gonna follow the rules
the
regardless.
You have
Okay,
guidelines
so
and
y'all, excuse me, y'all. I think we've covered.
I'm
the
sorry,
topic.
Megan.
We have.
And let's let Megan talk. She was up next.
I just had a couple of thoughts addressing some of the things that I heard. Mary had a great recommendation. I think it was Mary about having some sort of like training for council. Since we only are in session during a certain time of the year, I'm wondering if it would make sense for maybe one of the co-chairs potentially to give a presentation at the beginning of our session to City Council.
That would work.
And in that presentation, they could include, it would have to align timing wise, they could include a list of applicants that had submitted and then a list of applicants that had been submitted that proved to meet all of the requirements for consideration. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Council is aware in advance, 35 applicants submitted and only 30 actually met the minimum requirements for consideration.
Right.
And that might help capture a couple of the thoughts that were floating around.
I like
Yeah,
that.
that's a
Great idea.
non.
I would consider it part of outreach, you know, and it's informing them along the way of what the committee is considering,
Mhm.
so that it's not a surprise on their end or a surprise on our end. It's part of the communication. But of course, I would add not only the chair, the co-chair of the committee, but also our staff liaison or someone from the city will also be present, because I'm sure there's a lot of behind the door conversations that are going on that we're not privy to, that might have happened in this particular instance. And we will never know what was said behind closed doors.
Right.
But
I
if
agree.
we, again, with the transparency, clearly posted and improve our communication with the city board, I think that would resolve a lot of future issues.
I do too. And it won't seem like we're against them or we made a judgment call based off, you know, we didn't like them or anything. It won't be misconstrued as something else, but just that we followed the policies, you know, the rules that were set before us, but that city council is very aware of the rules that are set before us, so that when they go against something like this, then they can state they follow the rules. However, we want to give them the money anyway.
Right.
And so
No,
I think that, yeah.
I like the way Megan proposed it, that because it's very, you know, literal, you know, these are the people that did all the right things. These are the people that asked for money and they didn't do all the right things.
Mhm.
And, you know, whoever makes that decision is not us,
Yeah,
you know, and then I don't know what kind of leeway we have for, you know, if they choose to make a different decision, how much power we have to say, well, you know, I mean, I think we have the right to at least say, how did you come to that decision when, you know, these are the criteria, this is the criteria, and they didn't meet it. You know, I mean, I think they're required to at least give us an explanation or put us in the loop.
yeah. But
And-
I
and
like
I-
Monica and Megan's idea that we do
Yeah.
have a training, and then Monica was like, well, only like 3 or 4 people attend, you know, attend that training. And
Well, a
then
lot of
the-
people,
what
you
was-
know, maybe
I agree with that.
I don't know. A lot of these agencies have done this for quite a while, so they might not get involved with the training. I don't know.
No, she was
I
talking
think
about-
they'll get in
You
line.
say, here's the training and you still can't get it, then,
No, she's talking about city council.
okay, all right. Sorry.
Sorry.
Just a thought to kind of contributing to what you're saying, Gloria, it's fairly common for grants to have some sort of like Q&A webinar for applicants to attend. And so it could just be part of an annual process that there's some presentation made to city council at a city council meeting. And then there's also like a Q&A kind of info
Yeah, I agree.
events
Yeah.
as
Well, and
well.
I think it covers us too. We present.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, then it covers us. So I
Yeah.
like that idea. I like the way it's
Exactly.
worded and it's simple and,
Yeah.
you know.
And because these steps were not taken last year, we were not covered. And
Right.
so I think that if we take these steps this year, we will be covered. And any other organization, not just us, but
Right.
any organization that the city council has final say so or final approval of.
Right.
Carol, are you able to take these recommendations back to the city council? Will you be okay with taking them back to them? I mean, you won't get, whatever. You won't get gagged. Will you?
No.
Again.
You go up in there because they wouldn't let you speak, and that's the problem. They wouldn't let you speak, and I don't agree with that, because if you're the liaison and you're leading this board, they should have let you speak, and I told a couple of them that. You should have been able to speak,
Well,
to bring some clarity
the way
to what was going on.
The way it will run is we will transcribe these minutes and get all the recommendations. And then I'll go through the city manager's office in
Okay.
order to make the request of, hey, we'd like to have a presentation to city council. The board is asking if they can have a joint meeting with some training and so forth, and just, and see, so I'm proposing it to the people who are above me, basically, is how
Okay.
it works.
Well, we have a new city manager, and I think she'll get it done.
And in a way that's not offensive, but in a way that's just proactive so that we won't have the same problem that we did last year. Yeah. Okay.
So continuing on, so anything else that you feel like should have been done differently? So we've talked through some of the process, the end result, the city council meeting. Does that take care of that question?
Mhm.
Hmm.
I have one thought. It's a slightly more housekeeping admin piece. I personally, I don't know if other folks feel this way. I had so much paper. I was drowning in paper. I felt like if
Yeah.
like a USB drive or a Dropbox link, like a digital version of the information, and maybe upon request, printed binders, I think could be helpful, and maybe really save some time for your staff, Carol. I know that's a lot of legwork.
It
Yeah,
was also quite a bit of money. It
I'm
was
sure.
very expensive to print all of that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I really like that idea that we could just offer everyone a USB drive with all the information on it arranged according to a list and so forth. And then if you really prefer a paper, we could print a binder for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
As on request. I
On
think that's
request,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, because that was a lot. I even dropped my binder and papers and I'm like, forget this. I just put them
Oh,
together.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. We
Well,
are-
I
pretended I
can't
knew
have
where
enough
it
to
was.
file. Please
Yeah.
give me more things to file and
Yeah.
put in a notebook.
Well,
That
we
was
are-
I don't
horrible.
get enough of that.
Yeah, we are also we gave ourselves in this proposed calendar for this year, we gave ourselves several weeks to make between the time that the applications are submitted versus the time that the board receives the information. Because what
Awesome.
we didn't realize is how much we would be working with the agencies to be sure everything was in. And so we need to tighten that process up and be firm, like you've got to get it in or else. But also we gave ourselves a little more time so that once it gets to the board, it'll just be complete. So it'd be
Right.
like one USB drive, here's everything.
You can make that happen now? You
One
can make
book.
that happen at this point?
For next year's application process.
You
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
really? Wow, okay.
I like
Yeah.
that, Megan. Thank you. I won't have anything to drop this year.
Yeah. We would
That
much
was
prefer a
horrible.
USB drive, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say it was really helpful. I don't think in years past we've received each applicant's entire pack.
That was yeah.
And I really appreciated that. It was cool to see letters of support and, all the stuff that they put into it. It just, so I valued that, the breadth of
It was
information, just a
overwhelming.
lot of papers.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. We can organize it electronically so that it just lays out for everyone.
And also on presentations, I know that they only have like 5 minutes, but some of these organizations are new and they don't know how to effectively present. And so I think it was brought to our attention, Carol, that maybe we could have the people, organizations the old timers present first so that the new people can kind of see how they're presenting and, kind of mimic or follow them. I won't say
Yeah.
much, but yeah. I think
No,
that'll
it's-
make a difference in what we hear and also in our funding process as well. When they don't present correctly or give us enough information, that affects their scores and they don't know how to present. And so I think if we let the old timers go first and the every other or something, and the new ones go last or something, and encourage them to listen to the presentation so that they can know how to effectively present or know what information we're looking for.
But on top of that, Joanne, some of our old timers, and I'm gonna pick on Eleanor. Eleanor has been with us a long time, but we have new people who do not know Eleanor. And so I don't think that, because I think it came up, there was one person who presented and he just wasn't feeling well. And he just kind of gave a little bit of information. And that's just an assumption that everybody knows me. They know about the organization. But Eleanor gave an extensive presentation regardless. So I think we still should expect that from them because we do have new members and they deserve the opportunity to have the full scope of that organization.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, then, the score is not going to look real good if you just, cut and paste it. So we need to make sure that even though some of us know these organizations and we know what they do, they still should present their full organization, everything about their organization, and not, cut it short. Because we do have some new people who do not know about them.
Right. I understand.
And Carol, one other thing, and this is going to be, I don't want you to get upset, but I do need to bring it forward. We need to decide who's going to, if there's some questions, I think any board member, if a board member had some questions and they wanted additional information, it doesn't necessarily have to be you. I mean, your plate was full. So there was that organization that we did not get the information back. And I think it was because, Carol, you were doing a lot of stuff, but we need information. So I think
It was just that-
hold up, I'm not finished, Carol. Hold on now. I think it's fair that the board members should be able to contact that person. We need to decide about that, yay or nay, because we waited. And I'm not trying to, scrape it, but we waited for that information and we didn't get it. And then if we get called on it, if an organization came out, why did you score me such a low score? Well, we didn't get your information. Then that's on us. That's on us. So I just think that you need to think about that. If that is your decision, that you're the only one who's going to go back and ask questions that are posed to you by the board, you got to bring the information back in a timely manner. We had already voted on that organization, and then we got the information later. We shouldn't do that. We really shouldn't. So that's why we need to decide, is it okay? If I didn't get my answers during their presentation, I can call that person and ask them and get those answers and bring it back to the board. We need to decide about that, because that too could have gotten us into trouble.
We were able
Well,
to
I-
do that at one time because we
Yeah.
did site visits. Yeah.
Right, and I can check and see if there's any reason not to. I just thought that it would keep it organized to have just one point of contact, but I think.
That's fine, but you gotta get it.
I don't know if there is anything, I don't think there's anything in open meetings that would prohibit y'all from contacting an applicant, but I'm not totally sure. So I think I would need to ask somebody who knows the Open Meetings Act better than I do.
We used to do site visits. So we would contact them and set up an appointment and go visit them. So that's just what we did in the past prior to COVID. So
Yeah, well, there's a lot more people asking for, money. So.
well, I just meant that we had access to them. We could contact
Right,
them directly.
Right.
correct. Well,
And
and
this
I
is
don't
the-
know if this is in the same vein as what we're talking about, but there's a really good format for the information we're looking for. Where they're supposed to answer how many questions? Like four questions, basically. What's the agency mission? What are you requesting funding for? How are you going to measure the success and outcome? And how will you do that ongoing? And if each agency was able to speak, and it says 75 words or less per question, if each agency was able to speak to these questions directly, both in their written format and in their personal format, I think it would really simplify things. There was so much extraneous information on paper that you had to wade through to try to figure out whether or not they meet these kinds of measurements and criteria. I found it very work intensive. And but more is not better. There's agencies that submitted all kinds of data about what they're spending. There's no way you're going to peruse all that. You're never going to wade through all that. And so if they could just stick to those 4 bullet points and speak, present written information to those 4 bullet points without all that other stuff, I think it would be better. Is that kind of in the same area that we're talking about here, or is that something different?
No, you're on it. You're on it, Gloria.
I'm on it?
Yeah, you're on
Oh
it.
my God. Okay, good. Well, then I'm going.
You
with
wanna-
that. I'm going to continue to roll here.
You go,
I
girl.
think
Miss Gloria.
it's not complicated. These are the things that we're looking for. This is what you ought to present, without all the, other stuff that,
Talking about a presentation guideline,
unnecessary.
or Carol could come up with a presentation guideline to where they have 5 minutes, but what she feels would be pertinent for us to make our decisions off of in those 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Instead of, I know we got a lot of stories, but, and I'm sure that's to pull on our heartstrings, but to fine tune it a little bit more, maybe we can come up with like a presentation guideline that will not only help the old people, but also help the new people coming in as well. I like
Well,
that.
here's the other thing. Are they aware of how we're scoring them? They are aware of the scoring process, 25 points if you do this and 10 points if you do that. And, they're aware of it, obviously.
Yeah. That was in the application form.
Okay, Well, then maybe, that needs to be addressed. Maybe it should be a number 5 bullet points as to, where is that in the present? To help us more easily score them, so we don't have to go through all that, to try to figure out whether or not they've met that, what criteria they meet.
So it sounds like so if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you're saying you'd rather see the presentations address those central 4 questions in the application, plus the scoring, the questions that are part of the scoring criteria. Or not the questions, but the statements that are part of the scoring criteria. Like, we should have some guidelines for the presentations that say, this is what we want you to present on.
Yes, this is what we want you to present on, because that's what they submit. That's what they submit, to ask for funding, basically. Why should we fund you? So it makes sense that they should follow, they should present basically under those 4 bullet points.
Okay, well, that's helpful. All of this discussion is really helpful to me to shape the process for next year, for this year.
A couple of thoughts about what has just been discussed in terms of what Mary is addressing with the communication. I wonder if it would make sense for the chairperson to be able to communicate with applicants after the board has decided on what will be communicated. And this may be a little extra, I don't know, but maybe the chairperson just copies in all the board members into that email so they can get the information too.
I think that would work, yeah. And that would help Carol out too.
We can't do that, I'm sorry.
We can't copy, okay.
Right, because if the applicant replies all
I
to
see.
the board,
Okay,
then you've created a meeting outside of a posted
okay,
meeting.
yeah. That's what
I
we
see.
kept.
Sorry.
I was
Sorry.
thinking that was somehow avoiding the open meetings, but it's actually creating the issue, I see.
Or maybe the chairperson could get in touch with the organization if we have any questions and bring all of those answers back to the board during our meeting time.
Well, it could be that we just loosen it up to where
Mhm.
any board member can contact an organization. Like that may not be an issue.
Okay,
It may be just fine. So that's just something we need to double check. It could be just totally fine.
okay.
That's what Ellen was saying earlier when we were able to do the site visits. We could just go and speak to them directly.
Right.
Also wanted to speak to what Gloria was talking about. I'm hearing that having some sort of info session for applicants could be really helpful for them to kind of narrow in what the board is looking for and really make it clear for them. I think that could be really valuable, and it would be optional. It's not as if applicants have to attend.
Right, but at least they have a guideline.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Some sort of template for the applicants for their presentations, and maybe, I don't know how it might work, but maybe have a sample presentation video available for them to see how it was presented in the past by a seasoned
I like that.
applicant. Maybe Eleanor can volunteer, or
To
or
make a
anyone.
presentation, right?
You can blur out the faces if it's regarding confidentiality, but at least they can get an idea of how the presentation flowed. And they can get an example of how other people have presented with their PowerPoints, and they don't necessarily have to have the part with all our comments and questions back to the applicant, but just the presentation part of what they presented to us.
I like
think
that.
that might be very helpful for them, but again, we have to take into consideration confidentiality, Open Records Act. So I don't know if it would be possible, or someone could just create a sample, just a fictitious organization, and do something like that. In regards to the communication, I think that is very important. We do need to support our staff, our admins. And my concern though is when you have multiple people, because I've come across this in my experience in past work experiences, when you have too many people communicating with certain other people, the messages can become conflicting. And then that creates another issue in itself. So we need to be careful if maybe we can only delegate 2 people. So our staff liaison, and then as designated by that person, so it could be the chair or the co-chair, and keep it among those 3 individuals so that the messages that we are sending out to the public and to the applicants are uniform and consistent.
I
think
agree.
that is very important to prevent future problems. And again, it goes back just making sure we're transparent. Everything is posted on a website of what our criteria is, our expectations, maybe a main number they can contact, and then whoever is monitoring that box or that phone number, message, voicemail, whatever, can then delegate to a person and say, I need you to contact this person. And maybe just streamline that communication to the public that we are available, but we can still provide that support to our admins because they do have a lot on their plates as well behind the scenes.
Yeah, I like that. I agree.
In regards to the scoring, I really like the idea that we had a scoring this year versus previous years where everything was very subjective. As humans, our feelings do get in the way and our heartstrings get pulled and we get swayed one way versus another, which can create bias and then create future problems. I think it's great we had the scoring system. That was awesome. I would fine tune it a little bit more because if I recall, there was maybe 1 or 2 questions where it was like what we said, like 25 points, but there was 3 parts to it. And so what I was doing to be equitable was I was basically getting those 5 questions and then dividing 25 by 5. So I knew the maximum amount for each question would be, the 5 points. So maybe just fine tune it a little bit. So each one would have a maximum amount versus saying, okay, 25 points for this section, but it's up to us to decide which one weighs more than the other.
Right.
So kind of maybe streamline that a little bit. For each question would have its own maximum amount. And then in the end, once we did all our scoring, I like the idea that we have the option to change our scores. But maybe at some point, once we finalize our scores, it might be more, well, it would be helpful for me, and I don't know if it'd be helpful for others, but again, to kind of streamline it and reduce all that subjectiveness is, okay, so all the applicants that scored 25 or less on the risk will be removed from consideration. And then that would narrow our list further down. And then we would have more of documentation of this is our standard scoring and this is why they were not considered for funding versus going back on the subjective of, well, we had some people scored high here and some people scored low here, but if we get that average and say, well, they just didn't meet the criteria for funding because their risk score was this level, then it's just eliminating all that back and forth of having to justify why we decide to fund some projects versus others. And then maybe fine tune it a little bit further. Maybe I'm just being over ambitious, but then for the ones that we do consider funding, then they need to be within a certain score range to be considered for maybe 25% of the allowable funding that we can give them. And then the ones in this section of score range would be 75%. It can't be more than 75% or something to that effect. Like we would have a cap for each score range. I don't know if that makes sense or I'm explaining it correctly. I can visualize it. I just trying to verbalize it. Is that more confusing for everybody? I might have confused people.
No, like having tiers or sections based on the scoring.
Correct. Yes. So you would have score range with your tier levels of you can only get so much and you can get so much for this. I don't know.
I know if we do it like that, then if city council, or whoever looks at our scoring process and looks at the tiers, and they can see the justification for the amounts that we funded.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that. I know that won't be complicated for Carol to do.
Anything.
I see her face is blank, like, oh.
We can use it, we can use Excel, we can use Excel. That's easy.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. We could at least try something like that and see if it works. Yeah, I
We
like
can
that.
talk through it in a little
Mhm.
more detail.
Yeah.
Just to continue on, so we are at 8 o'clock and we have approximately half an hour unless y'all want to go longer. I wanted to be sure and cover what worked well as well, just to make sure that if there are things that you particularly thought were effective, that we be sure and do them again. And so is there something in particular that anyone would like to bring out that was really helpful?
I like the presentations to everyone versus the site visits where only one of us
Mhm.
would visit with them and there was no presentation, because we all received the same message and could take away what we wanted from those presentations.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And again, I really liked the way that we are going towards with the scoring system. That was very beneficial.
I like the scoring as well. Yes.
I second that. I really valued the scoring, the whole process that you all created. I thought was really good to eliminate the subjective nature of it, which is valuable for applicants. That's so valuable for applicants. They can really tailor their application to what we're looking for.
But are they? I mean, I think that would be the goal, but
Well, I think this was the first year that, so I think
Yeah.
it's hard that even though these things were made available to applicants, so many of them have just been applying for this funding year after year without this process.
no,
I
that's
don't think that applicants maybe knew how much to pay attention to it. I think with this being a streamlined process moving forward, it will be something that applicants look at. And
right.
I'll reiterate again that this is standard practice in grant applications to have scoring rubrics and tiered systems like what Monica is talking about. And the majority of these organizations, there are a handful that are very small, local, very, very local, small operations, but the majority of them receive other grant funding and are familiar with these types of processes. So I think that they will quickly kind of learn this process.
Yeah.
I agree.
If you could kind of somehow incorporate the two with, the basic 4 bullet point questions and the scoring so that they speak specifically to that, it would make our job easier, don't you think? Or is that
So.
a little too much to ask for?
We can sure look at it and we can see if we can blend it a little bit better, if we need to adjust. The
Yeah, because
scoring.
there is some, one of the 4 bullet point questions kind of speaks to the scoring process. And if you get money versus no money or less money based on whether how you score, I think it's in their best interest to somehow incorporate that in their presentation and in their paper versus USB presentation, that, this is specifically the information we need, not some of the other, extraneous stuff that you're submitting that nobody's going to look through.
Okay,
Right.
we can sure try.
Okay,
Is there
a lot of work for somebody then
Well,
to make that happen.
yeah. So then I don't want to leave anyone out or skip any questions. Is there anything else that we should discuss? I'm kind of like I asked 2 out of the questions that are on this list in the first tab. Is there anything else that we want to specifically cover about the process for our after action review?
About the process or?
About
Well,
the
yeah.
process or that, yeah, anything?
Yeah. I like this little cheat sheet that y'all, that's what I'm calling it, that tells you, what they asked for the year before and, how much funding they get from elsewhere. And,
Okay.
I find that this resource very useful and I'm.
Yes,
trying-
all the supporting documentation that you guys provided was very helpful. So
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
on the USB or
Yeah, thanks, Eleanor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
without that, I would be hard pressed to try to address the scoring process. So
Okay.
just making it, I mean, I don't think you're not gonna not continue to do that, but maybe making it a little more visible as to, speaking to the stuff that we're assessing,
Mhm.
know, kind of.
Okay. All righty. With that, we could go ahead and close this discussion if that's everything that y'all wanted to talk about for the after action review. Okay, so then I will go ahead and turn the floor back over to Joanne for the next item on the agenda.
The next action item is to discuss and take actions on recommendation resolution 2022-01RR to consider revising City of San Marcos, Texas Code of Ordinance, General Ordinance, Chapter 2 Administration, Article 3 Boards, Committees and Commissions, Division 9, Human Services Advisory Board, Section 2.232, Rules and Regulations to modify required meeting frequency.
Oh, yeah, that.
We will now receive a staff recommendation from Carol Griffith, Housing and Community Development Manager on amending the code ordinance. I will turn the floor over to Carol.
Okay, so now we're in the second tab of your binder. And just to walk you through it a little bit, after the cover sheet, the first 3 pages are the ordinance that governs all boards and commissions. And so I included that in your packet just as background so you can see kind of the basis for everything. But then if you turn to the 4th page, which has a yellow highlight in the middle, and it's got a title at the top, City of San Marcos Code of Ordinances. It's the same thing that Joanne just read. Chapter 2, Article 3, Division 9. Okay, this is the specific section of the Code of Ordinances that has to do with the Human Services Advisory Board. So this is what sort of forms the basis for the board. It creates the board and then sets in place the very most basic function of the board. In order to amend this, what would have to happen is that the board would need to take a vote and then it goes to city council for consideration. So the board itself cannot amend an ordinance. It has to be the city council. If y'all want to change something about these 2 pages, or it's a page and a half, then we can discuss it here and then take it to the city council as a proposal. Now, when I look through it, I can see that this was set in place a long time ago. It seems to be a complete discussion of what the purposes of the board are. So I'm really not recommending changing anything except one part, which is highlighted in section 2.3, I can't say it, 2.232. Rules and regulations. It says the board will meet at least once a month. And I'm proposing that we change that wording to the board will meet as needed to fulfill its duties. Because I feel like that way it simplifies things. You won't have to come together and decide not to meet. You can just schedule, you can approve a calendar, which we'll talk about at the next meeting. You can approve a calendar of meetings. This is our schedule for the year, and be done with it without having to worry that we're in violation of this ordinance that says you're gonna meet once a month. Does that make sense? So
It makes
I'm happy to answer any questions. It's just my personal opinion that it would simplify our lives. If y'all want to do it, we can certainly, there are ways to go around it. Like we'll adopt a calendar and we'll have to just specify that we're not going to meet once a month, blah, 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 or whatever. So with that, that's my recommendation. I'll turn it back over to Joanne so that she can lead the discussion of the board.
Okay. Is everybody okay with making that modification in section 2.232 rules and regulations? That instead of meeting at least once a month, we'll meet as needed to fulfill its duties?
And so formally, what should happen is that someone should bring forth a motion. Does
Okay.
not, you don't have to, you could
No,
just
no,
let
okay.
it die.
Let me know. what to do.
Bring
Oh,
forth a
so-
motion in a second, and then have discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion and a second regarding this recommendation?
I have a
that-
question. Are you suggesting this because you anticipate we may need to meet more than once a month or less than once a month? Or,
So if you meet once a month, what it's saying is that you're gonna meet every month of the year. And regardless, and this board actually meets once a week for a couple of months. It's a very intensive process that you do in a season. It's in the application season that you meet a whole lot, and the rest of the year you don't only necessarily need to meet unless somebody wants to call a meeting. So that's why I thought
Okay.
it would be more clear to say this particular board has a different way of operating. It actually meets intensively in a season to review applications.
no, okay, I was a little confused about that because I remember that it was certainly more than once a month.
Yeah,
So, okay, I get it. All right.
Can I have a motion and a second regarding this recommendation that to modify section section 2.232 rules and regulations, the board will meet at least once a month, will be changed to the board will meet as needed to fulfill its duties. So a motion made by,
I motion to approve.
and second,
Second.
okay. Is there any discussion? And I think we've already discussed that with Gloria, that it's not boxing us into once a month, but it's allowing us to meet as often as needed. We will now have a roll call to vote. Carol, will you please call the roll?
okay, so since we are proposing to amend an ordinance, we need to have a roll call vote. So I will now call out a person's name and you can say aye or nay. Joanne Parsons,
Aye.
Mary Earls,
Aye.
Monica Gonzalez,
Aye.
Alfreda Lee,
Aye.
Eleanor Owen O'Shan,
Aye.
Melina Pinjot,
Aye.
Gloria Quinn.
Aye.
Okay, and then Megan is a non-voting member, so we'll skip her, and so it passes unanimously.
Okay. And then the next action item is to discuss and take actions on recommendation resolution 2022-02RR to consider adopting the city standard board and commission bylaws for the Human Services Advisory Board. We will now receive a staff recommendation from Carroll Housing and Community Development Manager on approving the standard bylaws required for all boards by the city council. I will turn the floor over to Carol.
Okay, so now we're on tab 3. Several years ago, and now it's escaping me, I think it was like 2016, something like that. The city council decided to have standard bylaws for every single board and commission, worded exactly the same, except that certain parts would be inserted from the ordinance that governs the board. So for example, when you look at this third tab, what you see are, your first page has a lot of yellow highlight on it. Okay, that is the section that has specifically to do with the Human Services Advisory Board, and it's taken straight out of the ordinance that we just looked at. And it talks about the purpose of the board is to fulfill the following duties. And then all of that wording is taken out of the ordinance. And you turn the page, and then you have some parts that are in yellow that are just specific to this board. So this particular board has 8 citizens of the city appointed by the city council. And then you can see qualifications. All members will be committed to the development and enhancement of human services in the city. Everything else on that page is standard wording for every board and commission of the city. And so what city council was asking every board and commission to do was to approve these as the bylaws for your organization. Now, before I keep going through the pages, I'll stop and remind everyone, the bylaws are supposed to be for any board or a city governmental body. The bylaws talk about who's allowed to be a member and how you run the meetings, basically. It's kind of that basic structure. How do you elect officers? When do the terms start? All of that stuff. So the city council was trying to make it consistent across every board. Turn the page, and I'm sorry, I didn't number them, but on the third page, you see Article 6 agendas, and it talks about how agendas will be set. It's pretty formal. It is basically the agenda that we've been using actually for our meetings and so forth. You continue on. The next page talks about meetings, and it is giving you a little bit of Robert's Rules of Order, basically. It talks about making a motion, removing things from the table, closing the debate. It tries to give you a few tips on making motions. It's kind of long. Okay, then we keep going. There's a couple of places that are highlighted that are specific to this board. On that next page, in the letter G, it says the board shall meet at least once a month. That's gonna be changed. Now that y'all have changed the ordinance, that can be changed to the same wording that was just approved after the city council approves it.
As needed to
So-
fulfill its duties.
As needed to fulfill its duties. So first, we'll take that wording to city council. We'll assume they say yes, and then we'll be able to insert it right here
Okay.
into your bylaws. The only other thing that's kind of special to your board is it's the Planning and Development Services Department there at the bottom that supports this board, because the city manager told us we were going to do it. So, and it's our pleasure. I shouldn't say it that way. Okay, next page. Once
So
again,
I'm sorry, I
I'm sorry,
didn't
go ahead.
understand. Planning and Development Services, is that gonna be changed? Or are you saying it
That's-
stays?
that's us.
That's
so
us,
it's-
okay.
It stays. What it was before was the finance department.
Oh, so that's, okay.
So, okay, so now it says Planning and Development Services instead of
Okay.
Finance Department. Yeah, that was a good question though, because for a long time it was the Finance Department.
Okay.
Okay, next page, Article 9. Once again, it just, the only part that's any different from any other board and commission is that part in yellow that says the Planning and Development Services Department. So it's saying that a staff member is assigned to each committee by the director of the Planning and Development Services Department. So that's what we would do if y'all established special committees.
Okay.
We would have a staff member support you. And then last page is still all very standard wording. And it just says the bylaws were approved by the Human Services Advisory Board at their meeting held on, and I put in there February 15th of 2022. So y'all can take time to think about this if you want. if you have had a chance to read through it and you feel secure in going ahead with a motion, what the intention is that tonight y'all would just go ahead and approve these standard bylaws. Now, let me give you a little heads up on what's coming up next. Okay, in 2009, I think it was, this board created its own bylaws. And it has some things that are included in these standard bylaws, and then it has some things that are more like procedures or how y'all want things to be done. So what we're gonna do is, if you adopt these standard bylaws, which the city council has asked you to do, so I shouldn't short sell that. You kind of need to, is what I'm hinting at, but we won't lose anything that's in your current bylaws. We will just make them into your own policies and procedures document.
Okay,
And it'll be called the rules and regulations of this board.
okay,
And so what we'll do, not tonight probably, but at the next meeting, is then go through everything else that's in your bylaws, section by section, to make sure that we've covered it and we include it in your rules and regulations as this group wants it to be included. So, and that's one reason we specifically wanted to have these meetings in February. In addition, like we said we would, but also a couple of members are moving off of the board as of March. And so we really wanted to get y'all's opinions as the people who have been serving on this board. We want to make sure we get the rules and regulations set from this group. So all that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. With that, I'll go ahead and turn the table back over to Joanne.
okay. So to just get a good understanding, are you wanting us to, is it okay, I guess for those who've read through this already, to go ahead and approve the bylaws tonight? Is that what you wanted to make a motion to do?
That would be preferable, because then it'll be taken care of.
Okay, and the only change is, okay, on section G. Okay, can I have a motion and a second regarding this recommendation that we approve the bylaws of the Human Services Advisory Board with modification on section G? Instead of the board shall meet at least once a month, it's gonna say the board shall meet as needed to fulfill its duties, and everything else will stay the same. So motion made by,
I move to approve the bylaws with the modification to section G.
okay, and then seconded by,
I second.
okay. Are there any other discussions that we need? Or did Carol answer everything? Okay, we will now call a roll vote. Carol, can you please call the roll?
Okay, and I'm gonna try to start in a different order. So we're gonna start with Mary Earls,
Yes.
Monica Gonzalez,
Aye.
Alfreda Lee,
Aye.
Eleanor Owen O'Shan,
Aye.
Melina Pinjove,
Aye.
Gloria Quinn,
Agree.
and Joanne Parsons.
Aye,
Okay, and it carries unanimously.
okay. The next
I
action
just
item,
want to say one thing. And because I don't want to, we, on this list of purpose and duties, design a form for quarterly reports to be completed by city-funded human services advisor agencies for the city. So, but the city staff has taken care of that. I mean, I've been filling that out and that's going to remain the same. It's not that this board needs to redesign that, correct?
That's correct. It's always been worded this way, and what we see
Okay.
is it's.
And
been
also, we don't
delegated.
review the quarterly reports. I've never reviewed a quarterly report, so when we turn them in, I've never seen them from other organizations, so.
Yeah, and so this gives you the ability to do that, but
Okay.
you've delegated that to city staff to take care of.
Perfect.
Okay. So,
Okay, the next action item is to discuss and take action on resolution 2022-01R to create rules and regulations for the Human Services Advisory Board. We will now receive a brief presentation from Carol Griffith, Housing and Community Development Manager, on creating rules and regulations for the Human Services Advisory Board, followed by a self-facilitated discussion on each section. I will turn the floor over to Carol.
okay, so what I suggest is that I'll walk you through, like, here's what we're thinking of doing. And then if you want, we can adjourn, we could table this discussion and come back to it at the next meeting. That's up to y'all. I'm just saying, checking the time. So we are now on the 4th tab in the binder. And formally, these are called rules and regulations, but I have tended to call them policies and procedures. They'll be a little bit the same. So what's in your binder is the first section. I just wanted to give you a redlined version of your current rules and regulations so that you could kind of see it for yourself. What I've done is I've crossed through anything that was taken care of by the standard bylaws from the city council. So that's kind of, we don't have to think about that anymore. It's already in the other document. What I left in black and white are things that we need to discuss. Like, I need to lead a discussion of the board to see what you think about placing that section into your new rules and regulations document. So that's the first 3 pages. Is that where you see the red line? It's basically, I've just gone through and crossed out everything that we don't need to discuss, and I've left in black and white everything that we do. That's the old format. That's your old bylaws that I'm scratching through. Okay. But if you go to the 4th page under this binder where it says page 109, I've just tried to lay it out so that it's really clear which section we're discussing and what it says, instead of having to read through something that has it all scratched out and everything. So the plan is that we could go through each section one by one, and really your homework is to have already read them and have your opinions or your notes already lined out on anything that needs to be changed, or any wording changes. Do we need to add to it or take away? Do you like it as it is? I think you may find that some things are just like, yeah, okay, that's, that seems good. Other sections we may have to talk through a little bit and form up, and then set rules for how you want your board to be conducted. What else do I need to bring up? 1 second, let me think through. Sorry, my whole screen just went black. Okay, that was surprising. I think that's the main thing. I'm also proposing, once you hit like page 5 of 9, that's where I have gone ahead and proposed, like, hey, do you want to include in the rules and regs for the board as an approved, document, how we did the scoring this past year? You may or may not. I just put it in there so you can talk it through. If you don't want to, that's fine. Staff will proceed with a scoring method that we think makes sense, and y'all can always do something different if you want. I also included the funding requirements, which is, for example, you have to be a nonprofit, one of our favorite ones, And then I included the evaluation criteria and the risk categories. Now, if you think that you may want to change some of those, like we had talked about, maybe do we need to change the evaluation criteria? We can talk through that a little bit and at least get a sense of, do you want us to change it? Do you not want it to be set into this document that's been approved by the board, where it could have a little more flexibility, et cetera. That is the purpose of this next section of the meeting. While I have the floor, I'll also take you to the 5th tab just to give you a preview of what's next after that. There's a calendar in here for the year. And so that's what we would be asking you to approve as the last action next week. So I'm kind of giving you a preview of, here's your homework for the week. Read through all this stuff and make some notes on anything that you think should be different. And then, of course, we can go ahead and start the discussion now if you want. I just thought I'd give you an opportunity to table it and open it up next week instead. So I'll give you back the floor, Joanne.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing is, do we want to go ahead and go through this, or do we want to, because of time, it's 8:28 p.m., table it and put it on next week's discussion? And that way, I don't know who all has read through everything. I've scanned through it, but I haven't just sit and read through everything. That way it gives everyone a chance to have a week to read through everything. And like Carol said, make some notes. And I think it'll go pretty quickly next week if we're just familiar with what the changes should be.
I need more time to review it, so I would like to take.
Me too.
Me too. Okay. So Carol, it looks like we're gonna table this till next week.
Okay, so we'll
This could
need
be
to-
like the first thing we discuss, and I think because you recommended that we do make notes, I don't think, we would have to spend too much time on it like we would tonight, not being familiar with its content.
Okay, so since we are quite formal this evening, what we'll need is a motion to table and a second.
Okay, I make a motion to table this section 4 until next week, giving us time to study, to read through and to make notes. Can I have a motion a motion and a second regarding this recommendation? Motion is made by,
I motion to approve.
and then second,
I second.
okay, Mary. All right. So we have elected to table section 4 and 5 until next week.
Okay, and I am fuzzy on all the rules of Robert's Rules of Order. Can we go ahead and have not a roll call vote, but just a general vote on this motion to table?
Did you want to go ahead and do that, Carol?
Yeah, if you could just have if you could just say aye.
Okay,
blah, blah, blah.
Okay, well, Carol where's that at? Oh, hold on. Oh, yeah, we will now have a roll call vote. Carol, will you please call the roll?
Oh, well, I guess I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Okay, we are starting with Monica Gonzalez,
Aye.
Alfreda Lee,
Aye.
Eleanor Owen O'Shan,
Aye.
Melina Penjo, she's working with her technology.
Aye.
There she is. Gloria Quinn,
Who's Gloria?
Gloria, she's also
I'm
working.
sorry, I'm muted. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Joanne Parsons
Aye.
and Mary Earls.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we are officially tabled, and thank you so much, y'all. So our agenda will start basically next week with this item.
Okay.
Yeah, Carol, is there anything, this is probably pretty standardized procedure and information. Is there anything here that you think needs to be addressed or changed or looked at, or, that yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with it. So is there something that we should focus on that might need attention or tweaking or addressing?
I can answer that. Let's see, you can see that in yellow, I've marked page 2 of 9. It says the regular meeting of the Human Services Advisory Board shall be on the second Tuesday of each month at 5:30. Okay, well, we want to leave that flexible. We want to be
Okay.
able to, so we want to change that. And
Okay.
then on page 4, I would look at that whole page. It
Okay.
seems like that's things that are currently in the document that may need to be revised.
Okay. All right.
And then page 5 is proposed new stuff. And it may be that you can kind of glance over that and just say, no, we don't want to include this in our rules and regs, or yes, we do, and let's discuss it. So
Okay.
That's it.
All right. It just gives me a little bit of focus.
Oh, yeah,
All right. Thanks.
sure.
Can I add one thing that I think the board should consider as well? I think it would be valuable to consider the role of the non-voting member that I have been playing and only really trying to follow the rules or knowing much about them this year. Just if you have found that to be a valuable role, things that you would want this role to do differently or have more say in. I won't be in this role next year. I won't be serving on the board, so you won't hurt my feelings at all if you have feedback about what the non-voting member should look like, or if there should be one at all. So I just wanted to add that as something to think about.
This would be the time.
Yeah, I think that was something that we had brought up last year to discuss about the non-voting role, the social worker position, or if it should be something else. So since this is a Human Services Advisory Board, does that even fit? So yeah, I think that should be something that we should discuss as well.
I gotta ask, why are you a non-voting member?
Well,
Oh, it's
I mean, I literally don't know.
I think the original intention of the board, I actually know the social work professor that advocated for this position, is just that this role is kind of intended to be like someone who's sort of trade knowledge about nonprofit and social services. I mean, social services, human services are kind of interchangeable language where social workers are often employed. And so I guess the idea was that this non-voting member could speak to their experiences in the field and maybe is even familiar with some of the organizations and how they operate in a professional context. That was the intention behind the creation of the role. So truly, no one will hurt my feelings if they have strong feelings about keeping the non-voting member or not. I just think it's worth consideration if the board still deems it to be helpful.
And the official document where it's stated is in the bylaws. And so that's somewhere back in the day, when they wrote the bylaws, they said we should have 8 members and one of them is going to be non-voting and it's going to be a social worker.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why we do it. But
Thanks.
it is
I just
certain-
wondered why she didn't get a vote.
Yeah, it is certainly something that the board can consider. And then I believe you would make a recommendation to city council to change that provision, basically. So, yeah.
So that there's no non-voting member, there's only voting members, or?
If you wanted to, I'm not an advocate either way. Like, I'm a totally neutral, but that's the method by which you could change it.
The other boards, do they have a non-voting social worker, or are we the only ones?
As far as I know, I really don't know. I would assume that you're the only one.
Because I was wondering why. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because this one specifically requires a social work degree as well. And I think it's because this board deals with agencies that deal with social work.
Right.
And somebody thought that it would be preferable to have an advisory board member. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I just want to also say things that we could consider is keeping that there's a social worker on the board, but maybe they could have a vote. We could also do away totally with having that requirement. I know other boards do have requirements of like who is at the table. So it may not be that there's a social worker at the table, but there is somebody who, I don't know, I'm having a hard time coming up with
The
it.
equivalent thereof.
Well, what I think she's saying is like the Planning and Zoning Commission. You have to have a certain, like you have to have a land developer, you have to have an
Right.
architect, you have to have
Yeah.
this, so there are other boards with requirements. It just can be done in.
But this board is not requirement specific, so
Except for that position.
I don't, except for that position, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to open up a full conversation about it. We can definitely talk about it at next meeting. And I have thoughts too that I think could be helpful for the board in exploring this, but I do think it's worthy of discussion. So just wanted to plant that in your ear as you're reviewing these policies.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think so.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay. With that, Joanne, you have the table and you are welcome to adjourn the meeting. if you like.
Okay, it's now time to receive updates from the board members on
Oh.
activities since the last meeting.
Yeah.
And does any board member have an update for the group? All right, we'll move to the next item, which is future agenda items. Board members may provide requests for discussion items for a future agenda in accordance with the board's approved bylaws. No further discussion will be held related to topics proposed until they are posted on a future agenda in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act. Does any board member want to request an item for a future agenda? Thank you. We will now move on to the agenda item called question and answer session with press and public. This is an opportunity for the press and public to ask questions related to items on the agenda. Staff, is anyone present in person, online, or by phone to speak to an agenda item?
No.
Thank you for your participation. Do I hear a motion to adjourn meeting? The motion was made by.
I move we adjourn.
Oh, yeah.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 All against say nay. I will now adjourn the meeting at 8:40 p.m.